Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, I'm Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. You know, this is called a 3-month vacation, but very rarely do we cover any tips on vacation or holidays itself. So this episode is about taking a break. And we'll start with the most common question that we get, which is how do you decide where to travel? It's very frequent, this question that we get from clients. And the short answer is food. Renuka and I are 5 monument people, which effectively means that once we're done with about 5 monuments, we stop our sightseeing. Our travel is then restricted to food, to great accommodation, and lots of downtime to paint, to read, to take photographs. However, as we travel quite a bit, we've also picked up some nifty tricks along the way. And here are 3.5 nifty tips or tricks that you probably find very useful. The first one is how to get better car rental rates. Second one is how we mostly avoid Airbnb and when to choose it anyway. And the third one is where to find the most authentic food in a foreign country. Let's start out with the first one, which is car rentals. Let's say you wanted to rent a car. Would going from north to south be the same as going from south to north? Seems like a pretty silly question, but the answer may surprise you. Take, for instance, the way tourists land in New Zealand. They tend to get off in Auckland, which is the biggest northernmost city. And where do they head next? Exactly, to the south of the country. Which effectively means that rental cars tend to be picked up at one location and dropped off at a more southerly airport or city. The car rental companies have either to pay someone to drive those cars back or to offer much better rates for people who are driving back up to the north. So if you're on holiday, you need to ask yourself, where are people dropping off most of their cars? And that's a question that we often tend to ask ourselves when we're renting the car. If people are driving from north to south, well, you need to pick up the car in the south and start your holiday there and then move up to the north. However, as cool as this idea might sound, it's tricky to work out where to pick up your car and when to end your journey, and you might still want a better price. In which case, you might want to pick up the car a little later in the day. And you can try this tactic within the next few minutes. So if you go and book a car online right now at 9:30 a.m., you can just do this without actually paying for it. But if you book a car at 9:30 a.m., it's going to be more expensive than at 10:30 a.m. And I'm not sure why, but I guess people like to get going by 10 a.m. They have a hearty breakfast, they have their bags packed, and then 10 a.m. seems to be the outer limit for car rental pickup. At 10:30 a.m., the prices seem to be noticeably lower. The interesting bit, however, is that you might be able to drive away much earlier than 10:30 a.m. Recently, I went on a photo tour to the South Island of New Zealand, and Renuka joined me in Christchurch, which is also in the South Island. And a few days later, we picked up a car, and yes, we drove north, but we were well on our way before 10:30 a.m. Just because you booked the car at 10:30 a.m. doesn't mean that you can't get to the rental place a lot earlier. We walked through the doors at 9:30, we finished our paperwork, 20 minutes, that was it, and the car is waiting for you anyway. It makes no sense for the rental agency to just make you wait till the specific 10:30 a.m., but you pay a lot less and you drive away often before the rest of the clients show up. And that's the first tip, which takes us to the second one, which is to avoid Airbnb if you can help it. Did you know at which point Airbnb really took off as a business? The company started out as a room sharing system, but at one point, Barry Manilow, he's the singer, and his drummer suggested that they get house owners to rent out the whole place. That was when Renuka and I started paying attention to Airbnb. On holiday, I tend to sleep in. I'm not up at 4 a.m., but usually 5:30 is all I can manage. So in my own house, I can wander out in the kitchen, I can make some coffee, I can paint some watercolors, and in a hotel room, I'm stuck. I wake up, I try not to disturb Renuka, and then I surf the internet and I just buy random stuff. So Airbnb seemed like a dream come true, until things started to go wrong for us. When we travel, we tend to do so for about 3 to 4 weeks, which means that we'll spend as long as a week in the same house. In Aarhus, Denmark, for instance, we booked a place that looked adorable online. And the appearance didn't disappoint when we got to our destination, when we walked through that house, except it had a strong smell of fungus, and we were booked for a whole week. I don't know about you, but when things go wrong with Airbnb, there isn't a lot that you can do. If you write to them, they just wring their hands in despair. Their grief seems very genuine, but you're stuck in the place that you've chosen. They tell you, work things out with the owner, which is a cop-out if you ask me. When you compare that with a hotel, things play out completely differently. In December of 2017, we were in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, and we were on the 8th floor. And that room that we were in sounded and felt like a disco. It was that time of the year, it was closing in on Christmas, and there were loud parties around the swimming pool. So loud that 8 stories up, in our room, we were rocking and rolling. In an Airbnb, I would have been stuck. Not so in a hotel. Despite the hectic time of year, we insisted that we get a quieter room. And yes, it helps when you book with a hotel and not through Booking.com or some discount sites. So we endured the noise for one night, but then we were moved to a quieter zone. On average, hotels are a more frustrating but more predictable option. The beds are usually better. The mattress is cleaner. The sheets are in excellent condition. Most of all, however, is that the reviews of the hotel are harder to influence. In an Airbnb, all the hosts have to do is keep a little something extra or help you out a bit, and you feel that personal connection. Once you know the Airbnb owner and they've been kind to you, it's very hard, almost impossible, to write an unbiased review. A chain usually runs a hotel. It's impersonal as it sounds, and the reviews tend to be based solely on the experience itself. Airbnb seems to have figured out that there's room for more consistency, and so they've introduced a plus version of their bookings. But we're still veering towards hotels. You don't have to call anyone to let them know when you're coming. You can show up at 9 p.m. or 2 a.m. There's always someone to let you to your room. And as much as we love the warmth of a house on our travels, we found the consistency, at least to us, matters more. And if you've decided to go with a hotel, there's also a little loophole called the half-day rate. So if your flight is incredibly late at night and you have 7 or 8 hours, they're mindless hours, and you don't feel like walking around endlessly, you can step up to the reception and ask them for a half-day rate. And in many countries, that's what they do. They give you, just as it sounds, a half-day rate. So that was the second tip, which takes us to our third tip, and the most interesting one for me at least, which is to find the most authentic, delicious food in a new country. How do you end up eating in the same restaurant as Anthony Bourdain, Jamie Oliver, or some other celebrity chefs? You do what their production team does when they're looking for a great place to eat. Often enough, producers of a food show won't go to the fancy restaurants. Instead, they'll head right to the marketplace. If you go to Catania in Sicily, for instance, you'll find that the most authentic and delicious food is right next to the fish market. But it's not just Catania. When I was growing up, I'd go to my grandmother's house in Goa, and on Fridays we'd take the bus, and this is on a hot, stinky summer's afternoon, we'd take the bus and we'd go to the marketplace. And when we were done with shopping, where do all the locals go? Yes, right next to the market itself, which is to say that the food has to be top-notch because locals tend to be very fussy. It's also the one place where you're least likely to get sick because there's a constant food turnover. There are exceptions, of course. When in Hoi An in Vietnam, possibly the worst place to pick was the market. Hoi An used to be the sleepy fishing village not so long ago, but now it's inundated with selfie tourists. The area where the food is the most cheesy tends to be right in the center of the market itself. This isn't to say that the food is terrible in any way, but it's not quite the place to be. In most countries, however, you'll find that the market is the best source of authentic food and the most reasonable prices. When Renuka and I travel, we often make our way to the market. We find a place that seems suitable, and then, if we like it, we go back every single day to the very same restaurant. And it sounds crazy, but imagine this. They have like 50 different dishes, and what's the point of going to different restaurants every day? They're already making exceptionally good food, tasty food, delicious food. So we come back and we taste different things every single day as we go through the entire menu. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what we do. So we go back every day and you get better service. They know you. You get little goodies. And that's what we do. We go back on a consistent basis. And it's not like you need to stick to the market itself. We'll go to other restaurants as well. Even so, the tip is start or at least eventually get to the marketplace because that's where the food is the best. And that's it. 3 tips. But there is also one little nifty tip, and that's about economy travel. Economy travel, especially over long distances, can be quite tiring, and a little comfort can make a world of a difference. We travel solely in business class on work and holiday, and we've done so for several years now. But there was a time when we used economy to our benefit. On many modern planes, there are between 4 to 8 seats tucked right at the back of the plane. Unlike the rest of the seats, they're not facing the cockpit, but they're slightly at an angle, maybe 20 degrees, and they face inwards towards the window. These specific type of seats are just 2-seaters, so a couple doesn't have to share them with a third person. Even if you're traveling with kids, they can have their own 2-seaters instead of the 3-seat configuration on the rest of the plane. Most airlines will charge you about $30 for the luxury of these individual seats, but I found them to be the closest thing to premium economy. Because they're angled towards the window, inwards, no one nudges your hand when they're walking down the aisle. And when you have to go to the loo, you don't have to jump over hurdles and wake people up either. Check if your airline has the option and book through your travel agent. Good travel agents are amazing. You might think that a travel agent costs you more, but often a travel agent will suggest different routes or different airlines or whatever, And it might cost you a lot less. There'll be better timings for you to take off, to land. All of these little bits a travel agent can see on their screen, and you can't see it on your screen. So even if you have the price of an air ticket, you could go with that price to the travel agent and say, hey, this is how much I'm paying. Do you think you can match it? And you'll be surprised at what they can do and what they can suggest. So yeah, 3.5, that's another half. Maybe this is the fourth tip. Go with the travel agent. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. What did we cover? Let's do a summary, shall we? The first thing was about the car rental rates. Always go where people drop off their car and then move upwards. So if they're going north to south, you pick it up in the south. If they're going south to north, you pick it up in the north. And that's when you get better rates. Pick up the car at 10:30, 11. There's no hurry, but you get better rates. The best part is you can order the car for 11 o'clock, but then pick it up at 9:30. And often you can do just that. So that gives you much better rates for car rentals. The second tip is try hotels. Many of us have started to avoid hotels, gone to Airbnb, and hotels have picked up their game. And most of all, you'll get consistency and you can make changes, you can make cancellations, you can do all of these things that Airbnb just doesn't allow you to do. So this is not a tirade against Airbnb. It's just that we got sick of trying to keep a consistency factor when dealing with them. So you might want to try that. And the third thing is, where do you find the most authentic food? Yes, it's right next to the market. So if you haven't tried that before, go to the market and try it out. You'll be quite surprised. And finally, it's the seats right at the back of the plane. Slightly more expensive, but far less troublesome when it comes to getting up and moving around. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in psychotactics land. It's March, and this March 2020 is all about article writing. It was one of the most frustrating things that I had to deal with when starting out psychotactics. I just couldn't write articles. I didn't know what the structure was. I didn't know if I was going the right direction. Everything about that whole writing process drove me crazy. And it's not like writing gets easier. You still have to think up stuff and you still have to bring out those concepts. But at least having a structure, having a roadmap makes a huge difference. And the dates when you can buy into it or access it is on the 21st of March. And that's the live version, which means that when we start out in May, all of June, all of July, 5 days a week, you've got assignments every single day and you have to do those assignments. Now, if you don't want to do that, then the second option is on the 28th of March, and that's the self-study version. You download the audio, you download the PDF, and you work through it at your own pace, usually with a buddy, because that helps. But those are 21st of March and 28th of March. How do you get here? How do you get to this page? Well, we have only 20 seats for the live version, if I'm not mistaken, and about 25 for the self-study. Yes, we know it's a PDF. We know that it's a self-study, but we have limitations. So you have to go to psychotactics.com/AW. That stands for article writing goodies. So that's psychotactics.com/AW goodies. And then you'll get some goodies, but you'll also be put on the waiting list. And 5,000 BC members, they get first preference. So you might want to be a 5,000 BC member, because it fills up very quickly, these courses, sometimes within an hour, sometimes 20 minutes. So that's where we are right now. Go to psychotactics.com/awgoodies. And that's what's happening in March. To be part of these courses, you have to have read the brain audit. So if you haven't read the brain audit, well, go to psychotactics.com/brain audit, get yourself a copy, read it, or you can go to Amazon and get it as well. And 5000 BC, you want to join 5000 BC because it's a place where introverts meet. There is a forum, and it's almost like consulting. You ask a question, you get an answer from me and from other people, but I'm there all the time. And that's the uniqueness of the forum. Except when we're on holiday, we're there all the time. You can ask 100 questions or 100 times the same question over and over again. I don't know. There aren't many places on the internet where you get access to the person and you get a precise answer and not ramble through 1,000 YouTube videos or 1,000 pages on Google. So to get there, go to 5000bc.com and that's what you'll find. Plus, you get this access to courses and stuff well in advance of everybody else. So there you go. That's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? Renuka. She's very mischievous, and at times she comes up with her own crazy things. And this is the song that she made up when we were in Vietnam. You might want to hear it. Might want to turn down the volume a bit. And if you find yourself laughing in a bus or a train or wherever you are right now, then be prepared to laugh. That's all I'm going to say. Here's the music. I did warn you, didn't I? Bye for now.